And with us now is Illinois Congressman Krishnamoorthi, who sits on the Intelligence and Oversight Committee. Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. I thank you for being with us this morning. I want to begin by getting your thoughts on the arrest of this suspected leaker.
I'm glad that he was arrested. I'm glad that hopefully we're getting to the bottom of how this happened. But I got to tell you that people like myself are waiting for the classified hearing next week, at which we're going to ask pretty tough questions of the Pentagon and others as to how this possibly could have happened. You know, we spend billions and billions of dollars collecting these secrets and preserving these secrets. And so for a 21-year-old to be able to access them, print them out, and then share them with a bunch of his teenage friends is just mystifying.
Well, so what are the top questions that you're going to be asking?
Well, I think that it's, to me, there are way too many people who have access to these secrets and to these classified documents. And then secondly, I think that the manner in which they have access is just way too easy for them to share with others. You know, one of the reasons why there aren't too many members of Congress who are tied up with a lot of these classified document scandals is that we are only allowed to view them in classified spaces. We're only allowed to view hard copies, not electronic versions. And we're required to turn them back in the moment that we're done reading them. And yet here we have a 21-year-old National Guardsman who has electronic access to all manner of subjects involving classified material. And is it any wonder that he would be able to print them and then upload them onto some random server somewhere? This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking if he was able to do it in one server and eventually got caught because apparently some of the people in that group put it on another group and that started disseminating, I'm wondering, could there be other areas of the internet, other chats where this kind of stuff is happening and they're not leaking out yet?
That's exactly right. I think that I'm hopeful that this was an isolated instance, but we can't just be confident about that. And so that's why I think it's going to be super important for the counterintelligence folks at the FBI and DOJ, as well as the Pentagon, to get to the bottom of exactly whether any other documents were leaked and how to mitigate any damage stemming from them, as well as the damage that came out of this initial leak.
And then, of course, there's the issue of how do you balance security with people's right to privacy? Sure.
Obviously, in this particular instance, many of these secrets were collected on foreign targets. And I think that, I'm hopeful that the damage isn't as extensive as that we fear. But certainly with regard to Americans, I'm hopeful that we're not collecting on them in any way incidental to what's been collected on these foreigners. And God forbid that material gets leaked as well, and there could be further damage.
Congressman, I want to ask you about something else in the news. ProPublica reports billionaire Republican donor Harlan Crow bought property from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas back in 2014 for more than $133,000, but Thomas didn't report it, even though a federal disclosure law requires officials to disclose the details of most real estate sales over $1,000. Are you and your colleagues at all having conversations about some form of congressional oversight or ethics reform for Supreme Court justices?
Yes, this comes up fairly often. And now I think the drumbeat is going to be louder and louder because first of all, even within the judiciary, it appears that there are different standards that apply to Supreme Court justices versus lower level judges in this sense, which is the Supreme Court justices need to disclose when they receive gifts. And in this case, Justice Thomas didn't even bother doing that. But for lower level justices, they're not judges. They're not even allowed to receive gifts above a certain amount. And yet Supreme Court justices are. And so I think that that's one big discrepancy that needs to be addressed. Just so you know, with regard to legislative branch officials and members of Congress, we're not allowed to receive gifts above, I believe it's $50. I forgot the exact threshold amount. And so I think that that's a fundamental issue that we have to deal with, because I think people are just going to question the integrity of the judgments and the opinions that are rendered by Justice Thomas and others. What did Harlan Crow or his associates get in return for these lavish gifts? There might have been millions of dollars worth of luxury yacht cruises, plane trips, vacations. And it wasn't just Harlan Crow going on these vacations. A coterie of apparently advocates, lobbyists, lawyers for different interests with matters before the court also went along on these trips.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, I thank you very much for being with us this morning.